It was hot that summer, and people were just fed up. You know, the frustration of being black, particularly in certain segments of the community, has always been something that bears down on your soul and causes you to want to strike out against it. And finally, that spark just is like people say, well, that's it, that's enough. We're sick and tired of it. We're just not going to take it anymore.
The word was coming that it's going to be a riot. And that Thursday night, they was telling everybody, everybody that had the head of the house, if it was whoever was the man, the head of the house, had to come out on 103rd, and that was just back of my back door. I could walk out and down to 103rd, but we had to throw at the cars that was coming by.
Anyone traveling westbound on Imperial, chances are your car was hit with a lot of rocks. I mean, there would be people flying like 60 miles an hour, and somebody would take a trash can and throw out there, and then it would cause an accident, stuff like that. So it was a lot of people that was really hurt that night.
My dad called one of the guys that worked for him and said, you know, let's go down, check it out. It was his supervisorial district, and my dad was very hands-on and always wanted to eyeball something himself. And he recounts the story as, you know, again, 2:30 in the morning, very quiet, very sort of eerily quiet. And they'd gotten up to an intersection and were waiting at a red light. And then apparently rioters had been doing that. They'd been standing back and waiting for cars to stop at a stop sign, and then pelting their cars with bricks. And so my dad's car was pelted with the brick, went right through his windshield, hit him, and you know, he had a cut on his face, I think, and glass all over his suit. He went to a nearby resident's home and knocked on the door and said, you know, I'm Kenny Hahn, and I think I've been hurt. And this wonderful African-American woman brought him in and attended to his wounds. And after that, I think he had contact with her, and I think they kept up a friendship over the years.
And there was a lot of excitement in the community. I mean, it was like the feeling that we got was a lot of people were thinking, well, this is finally the blacks have broken through. We're going to take over the city, and this is going to become an all-black city, and it's jubilation time.
Our focus was to get more weapons and guns. We were not satisfied with bricks and bottles, and our focus was any place that they had weapons on, and then that was our target, as well as dealing with the police. But it was not so much as to get the weapons to shoot the police, but to have the weapons in case we had to defend ourselves in terms of a shootout with the police.
I called my father, which lived on 110th Street, and told him what was going on. And he came over to the house, and he asked me, you know, was I afraid? I said, afraid of what? I wasn't afraid of anything. I said, I'm not doing anything, and so I'm not afraid. And then all hell broke loose.
The last night we came through there, and they had thrown out all of those big catfish, buffalo fish, out in Imperial, in the middle of the highway. Ice was out there with them. No, hey, you know what? I told the guy, I said, well, it's somebody's going to get the fish. They're not going to let them spoil, I tell you that.
I saw all of the burning and people going down the streets with couches on their heads and stealing the liquor. They always played that up, stealing the liquor out of stores. But that's just Hollywood, you know. I saw it on the news, Hollywood. And And the other people in the hospital, they would make their comments, right? Like, look at that, see, they stealing all the liquor. I said, so did Al Capone. What's the big deal?
One of the interesting things about the Watts community and LA, and in particular Black LA, first of all, you had Black radio, you had KGFJ, Montague, who was the guy who they claim came up with the slogan, "Burn, baby, burn."
When we called the fire department, when the fire department came and two men went inside a ShopRite market, that steel was so hot it was melting.
It's your worst nightmare because at one particular time I had worked at one of the local drugstores which was Mr. Abrams on 103rd, and I had shopped all up and down 103rd Street. We had two theaters on 103rd Street. 103rd Street was really kind of like the lifeline of Watts, because we had a lot of people that worked on 103rd. And in turn, to see all of that destroyed, you know, it's, I don't think you ever get over it.
I had just purchased my first piece of real estate, and so proud of it, I sent for my mother to come from Louisiana to spend some time with me. Coming back from the bus station downtown, thing was so lit up, I didn't know if I had my lights on or not. Things were burning up and down on each side of Broadway, the freeway, et cetera, et cetera. And she says, it'll be all right with me, you turn around right now and put me back on that bus and send me back to Louisiana.
A grocery store on the corner of 120th and Central was set afire. And it was really up in flames, and then it occurred to me I hadn't heard any fire engines. So I called in to report or to find out if they knew about it. No, where is this one? was the response I got. You could tell they were just busy. So I gave the address. However, by the time they got there, the front of the building had collapsed, killing our first fireman.
And to stand on the rooftop of Queen of Angels Hospital and look out over the city of Los Angeles and see a section of that city on fire like a war.
That Friday morning, well, we decided we'd go up there. And there was a store up there that had high-priced clothes, but you would like to get something in there to say it came from that store. I can't call the name of the store, but that's the store I went in. And I went in that store, and it was so many people in there. All I could see, I got a fan off the desk. It was still on, and it was hot too. I just pulled the fan, got the fan off.
What was that the owner of the liquor store, a guy named Red, had said that, you know, he didn't care if whatever people could rummage and take out of the burned spot, that he wouldn't have any objection to it. And so people were rummaging, and the police came, and when the police came, my brothers, being young teenagers, took off running. The policeman leveled his shotgun at my brothers as they ran away from him, and my father jumped between them and the shotgun and begged, you know, please don't shoot, those are my sons. And in that split second, the officer made a decision, and the decision probably saved my father's life.
When the riot broke out at the onset, you know, everybody was kind of up in awe, like, what's really going on? As it progressed and things began to really get out of control, what we began to see was there was the implementation of curfews. We saw machine gun emplacements being placed around the perimeter of what we call South Central. You know, the nights belonged to the street people who were involved in, you know, whatever activities or practices that were being, you know, partaken of at that time. You know, tremendous amount of burning, looting, just pillaging, so to speak. You know, all you know, screaming and crying out in a loud voice, saying, "Hey, you know what? Enough is enough. We've had our fill."
During the riots, I remember one of the things that we coined was Watts is where black folks are. So Watts could stretch to Canada, as did the LA riots. They tried to do it the same kind of thing, but it didn't work, you know, because people knew a little better. But Watts, you know, is where black folks are. So we had a 35-mile curfew zone. Watts is 1 mile square. Oh my gosh.
I kept waiting for somebody to stop it. You know, in other words, this has to stop, you know. And it went from day one, day two, you know, on and on.
And they were afraid to venture outside of their houses because they didn't know what would happen to them and their children, which is only natural. You know, when something, you know, a spontaneous eruption like a riot, you know, something just happened and you're not ready for it. You don't even have that in your mind that people are going to riot, you know. It can come as a shock.
I think one of the most disturbing things for me was when the National Guards rode through the project with guns drawn. And even, you know, you watering the yard. I shall never forget, I was watering the yard. And they had guns drawn, and they looked at me as if I was, my God, gonna be the worst terrorist in the universe.
There was a National Guardman on every roof. And I stopped at Imperial Highway and San Pedro. And two came and put their guns in my car. One on each window, roll the window down, and put those guns in my face in my car.
And they fixed hot sandwiches and coffee for the National Guards and the police, the ones that, because some were working around the clock. You know, the shifts were changing, but they were working around. And so they prepared food for them, but none of that was ever said in the news. First time I heard it. It was only that how the people were throwing it at the police, and they were doing all kind of negative things to it. That did not include the people in the community. People in the community were the same decent people they are now.
I remember seeing the armored trucks driving down Central. I remember leaving our house at the time, driving down Central, and being told that we could not cross a certain street or into a certain boundary. That I do remember. My father also had a nightclub on 92nd and Graham where there were whites and blacks attending his nightclub, and after the riot he lost his business because clientele refused to come after that. They didn't want to come down into the area.
And my sister, it was so hot, like the summer months, it was in September, it was really, really hot. And they asked if she could go out, they could go out and sit in the front yard. And she said, it's so much going on, rioting, so stay close to the house. So she spread a blanket in the front of her house, right in the front, close to her porch. And she let them go outside and sit. And she heard the shots, but she thought it was like firecrackers. She said it didn't sound like a gun. Then she heard her youngest, the one that got shot through the heart, the 4-year-old, he died instantly. And the 2-year-old jumped up to run, "Mommy, Mommy." By the time she got to the door, the 4-year-old they were getting up to move, and he got shot in the process of running.
We looked at the law enforcement, we looked at the leaders in the community, and no one individual was able to speak and quiet things. A combination of people tried, and it didn't stop anything.
Most of the time when they started, I was glad when they named it the uprising, you know, I said, because it was an uprising. Heaven only knows what really started it.
If you were talking to somebody who believed in the concept of Black Panthers, then it was a rebellion. If you talked to somebody who believed in Stokely Carmichael and that group of people who believed in violence, then it was a revolt. If you talk to somebody who was a Black Muslim who believed in we were going to have our own stuff, then it was an uprisal. You talk to somebody like me, it was a foolish decision.
We felt, and the majority of the people who participated in terms of what was going on, you know, that we have defeated a people, we have defeated, you know, an attitude. We have confronted racism in its rawest form and had won, and it was a good feeling.